Welcome back to the Green Beans Go channel. It's your host, me. And if you watched my previous video where I discussed my personal journey as a professional sports bettor and why I no longer view myself as a professional sports bettor, I alluded to the fact that this video was coming. It was on the horizon. And I spent quite a bit of time, I wouldn't say perfecting this, but building this out to a place where I felt comfortable enough to share it. And I want to be the first to say that this is from my observations and from my experience. This is from my perspective. And I know for a fact there are going to be a lot of sharp bettors, pro bettors, and maybe even casual bettors who disagree fundamentally with what I am going to present in this video. I want you guys to understand that these are my opinions. And a lot of times when you're dealing with a math-minded world or a math niche or something like sports betting where there are objective facts, people forget that we are still humans and we still have opinions and we still have emotions and feelings, and those things matter in the grand scheme of the industry. So while I do believe there are going to be people who view this from a skeptical or even a full-on disagreement angle, I want you to understand that I'm trying to communicate something that I believe is right or better for the masses, something that I've experienced and something that I want to kind of stand on as it relates to Green Beans Go and what I do in this industry. So without further ado, I will let you know there is a ×2 button down there. A lot of people are, expressing discomfort at the fact that I make you sit and have an attention span for longer than 10 minutes. I won't apologize for it, but I will point you to the ×2 button. So here's the life cycle, real quick. Phase 1, getting started. Phase 2, knowledge. Phase 3, we'll call it the edge phase. Phase 4, limits. And then phase 5 is bizarre because I think after limits come for most sports bettors, the road diverges and you have to take a path. And there are often 3 different paths that I think people take. And then after these 3 paths, or the possibility of these 3 paths, I believe there's an opportunity to arrive at the purest form of sports bettor. So we'll go ahead and get started here, and we'll start with getting started. A lot of times in phase 1, people, when they're just getting their toes wet, getting into the industry, they're betting with their heart, they're betting with their gut. They're doing it for fun. They're doing it for entertainment. They're betting players they like. They're betting teams they like. They're betting a lot of parlays. They're typically betting with smaller stakes. As they warm up to the industry, they're betting a few bucks here and there, maybe even cents here and there as they try to make sense of what this industry is. And believe it or not, some people never leave this phase. I know that if you're watching this video, you're probably interested in sports betting enough that you're familiar with the terms I'm going to describe later, such as plus EV and arbitrage and getting down and getting accounts. But there's a lot of people, and probably the majority of people never leave this phase. And what I'm going to argue is that that may not be a bad thing. Now, I think phase 6, the purest form, includes elements of this that also include elements of being a sharp bettor. But I think as long as you're not over betting, as long as you're betting your disposable income, a lot of people look at phase 1 with a lot of disgust and a lot of disrespect and a lot of judgment. But I don't know if phase 1 is really the worst place that the average person could get to and never progress past. But if you do progress past, you often go to the knowledge phase. This is where you start learning about the market. You learn what truly is price, what that number -200 represents. You learn about closing line value, getting a number, at +6 and having it close at +4. You learn about what fair value is and maybe how to calculate fair value. You are still maybe betting with your heart, with your gut, but the mind comes into this too. You're thinking about it in a more mathematical, probability-centered way. However, you still may make some negative EV bets. Maybe you like the Timberwolves this evening because of X, Y, or Z, and X, Y, or Z are not mathematical probability-based assumptions. They are otherwise accounted for. And you may make a bet on the Timberwolves, you may win or lose, but at the end of the day, somebody out there may say that was a bad bet. That was objectively based on the number you got or based on the market, you took a bad bet. Now, some never leave this phase either. And again, I would argue that that's not necessarily a bad thing. Phase 3 is what we're going to call the edge phase. And this is all-encompassing, and it's hard to fit everything you want to say into these 6 phases. I understand there's probably multiple facets within these phases that exist, so I am going to be using some generalizations. I will apologize for that, but I need you to understand this is the best I was able to do for this video to get my point across, which I hope I do. You start making money in this phase, like actual money, consistent money, money enough that you're tracking your bets. Maybe you have a Pickett account and you're seeing growth. Now, this can be done through arbitrage where you're not risking anything. This can be done through strictly plus EV bets, just taking good bets versus the market. You could be looking at an odds screen and finding outliers. Maybe you're just hitting soft lines on soft books such as Canby or Fanatics or BetMGM. Maybe you're finding glitches. You have a software that alerts you where there's a glitch line and you're betting a lot of those. The most interesting piece of this puzzle that I think is under-discussed, if discussed at all in this industry, I would argue it's not even discussed, is this point of you don't feel addicted because you aren't losing. And if we think about the context of what an addict is in the sports betting world, addicts lose money, and addicts lose a lot of money. Addicts lose money they're not supposed to lose. They can't afford to lose. Addicts has a negative connotation. I think there are plenty of addicts who win money. I think I was an addict who was profitable. It consumed my time, it consumed my energy, it consumed my attention, but I did not label myself an addict because I was winning. And, if you are a single individual with no job, this is your job. I'm not going to exclude gender here, but typically if you're a single man and you have, no family around, like this is your life, then maybe your addiction is less critical, less important. But for me, I had a family, I had a wife, I had a kid. At the time I had a job, I was teaching, and this took up a lot of my time. And so what I did not lose in money, I maybe lost in being present. And a lot of people don't understand that or may not have to worry about that. And that's okay. And that's going to get me called soft by the industry and da-da-da-da. But I think it's an important piece to discuss at some point. You may be betting top down or bottom up or both. You may be originating. You may be making your own line. You may be saying, well, the price on the Timberwolves, I have fair at minus 180. I can get them minus 130. That's a good bet. I'm going to take them. Or you may be looking at the market and saying, everybody's at minus 180, but DraftKings is at minus 130. I'm going to take them because that is a clear outlier. This is where the sharp bettor lives, and this is what you see online. And this is what I see all over Twitter. My Twitter feed is 75% people in this category. And I think, honestly, that taints a lot of the perspective of bettors who are not at that level. Bettors who are in the knowledge phase or the getting started phase see guys in the edge phase and they think, wow, like this is possible to make money. Wow, I can do this. Wow, this really shows promise. Like it could be done. And I think it paints an unrealistic perspective, which we'll talk about a few minutes later, that can be harmful. Now, this is the ultimate goal for bettors who want to make money. And isn't that all of us? I would argue that most people sports bet because they want to make money. But I would also argue that as I grow in this industry, I think that is a paradoxical flaw. I think that is a fundamental philosophical issue with this. And I know I may sound like a hippie. I know I may sound like completely out of a left field to a lot of people. But I think the promise of making money in this industry is going to be the downfall of a culture who has gone in head first to this industry. So after you find an edge, after you win money, after you're successful, after you're addicted, but you don't feel like you're addicted because you have thousands more dollars in your bank account, you get limited. And if you are winning, you will be limited. And I want to put an asterisk by that and then clarify, you can either win or you can show a skill set of a winner. I got limited on Caesars without turning a profit. I was net down on Caesars when they limited me. That's just because I was betting lines, I was betting markets, I was betting things that showed Caesars, wait a minute, this person knows what's going on. This person is hitting our glitch lines. This person is betting straights with volume. We need to cut them off. So limits can come all shapes and sizes, all different ways. Limits can come based on volume, right? These sports books want parlay bettors. Rec books, DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars, MGM, they want rec players. They want addicts as we know them. They want people who chase big wins and lose a lot along the way. So truly, if you are on these platforms and you're betting $100 to $500 on straights, you're more likely to be limited than someone who is betting just parlays. Just in a vacuum, those two things. Books don't even like straight bets. If you're betting things that look like they might be an edge, you're getting closing line value. Even if you don't win, you could be limited. This can all happen at once. This can all happen over time. This could be days. This could be weeks. This could be months. This could be years. It all is dependent on a myriad of factors, but it will happen if you are showing any sign of winning. Now, this is the great divide. This is where people, after they become limited, if they've taken these steps in the phases, which I believe a lot of people's goal is to do such, you get to a place with three paths. You're sitting here with limited accounts. What do? Well, you either get accounts, you enter what I call the danger zone, or you go down the road of acceptance. So we're going to talk about each three of these. Getting accounts is likely the phase that I have a moderate disdain for. And I'm going to acknowledge my bias, and I'm going to acknowledge what I'm bringing into this conversation, but I'm also going to ask that you listen to why. If you can't bet with accounts in your name, but you still want to make the money you once made, you need accounts. Now, accounts can happen in multiple ways. You can get partners. You can become part of a group where people are betting for you, or you're doing PPH accounts, or you have access to exchanges that don't limit, or you have player twos. You sign up a friend, you sign up a friend's friend, you sign up a cousin, you sign up an aunt, you sign up somebody in your family that you know, that you trust, where the risk of getting stiffed is less. But usually with that, you need burner phones. You need phone plans. You need new Wi-Fi. You need a new IP address. You need Mint Mobile. Okay? I'm going to tell you a story that I've told before. I signed up someone in my family as a player, player whatever, okay, doesn't matter what it is, at home on a new device. I lost every bet, and in 2 days I was limited because they connected my Wi-Fi to this other player back to me and said, wait a minute, right? Like, these books understand what people are doing to get around limits. And I know there are going to be plus EV people, professional sports bettors, in the comments of this video, or sitting there, even if they don't comment, behind the screen saying, yeah, well, if you're not going to work hard at it, if you're not going to if you're not going to, well, then yeah, you're not going to make money. It requires some effort. But the effort required is not discussed. The effort required is not coupled with showing the winnings on Twitter. People aren't flexing their pickets saying, hey guys, I made $6,000 this month. I'm actually on my 7th BetMGM account, my 6th DraftKings account, and I pay for 3 different phone plans to make it all possible. That's what kind of upsets me, and why I feel like some of these professional sports bettors or plus EV guys are dishonest. And they sell this dream, and often they sell a service that they're guaranteeing or promising or giving at least the hope that making money is a legitimate possibility, but they do not bring up the fact that when your accounts die, you need to go out to Walmart, you need to sign up for Mint Mobile, you need to get a burner phone. And then what happens when that account dies? Well, you got to go get another burner phone because now they're getting tracked by phone themselves. You need to go get another line from Mint Mobile. You need to only stay on cellular. If you accidentally connect to Wi-Fi at home and the system picks it up, there's not transparency in that way. I'm not even talking transparency as far as what you're betting, how much you're betting. I don't even care about that. I'm talking about transparency in just in the technicality of sports betting. And that's what upsets me, is pros often parade around about their proness, but remain secret about their practice. And they have to, right? If professional sports bettors, if these guys on Twitter with these 50 to 100,000 followers who are always flexing their pickets, who are knowledgeable, who are intelligent, who are plus EV, if they got on here and said, I'm on my 15th DraftKings, I know people who are on their 15th DraftKings account. It's not reasonable. It's not realistic for 90% of sports bettors. But 90% of sports bettors on Twitter, seeing them win, seeing them do this, and they get this sense of envy, they get this sense of jealousy, they get this false hope that it is possible. And I understand that I sound like a crybaby. Oh, well, get good, bro. Like I get that mentality. But the element of get good is a systemic barrier in this industry that is not discussed. And if it makes me a whistleblower, if it makes me an Edward Snowden, well, then by golly, put me in jail. You can also go down the danger zone, which I will admit I went down. I was in. Because I've conditioned myself to believe that this is a long-term money-making enterprise. I was making good money, and I was making consistent money, and I was making relatively risk-free money for the better part of 3 and 4 years. And so when that ends because of limits, and I'm not going to go out and get Mint Mobile, I'm not going to go out and purchase a burner phone, I'm not going to sign up for somebody so that in a week and a half, it's all over. And, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy. I'm trying to pour back into this community through content, not through extracting, volume from these books. When that happens and you reach the limit phase and you say, I'm not going to get accounts, where am I going to go? The danger zone is one of them. And the problem is it's no longer fun to bet small stakes and win small. When I had been winning as much as I was winning, when I had conditioned myself to being profitable, now a $5 bet doesn't really get me out of bed. You're forced into corner based on limits. And the only way to leave that corner is to bet things that give you higher volume, but maybe minus EV, right? Now you're betting, okay, I can get 100, 200 on a money line. Maybe I'll overbet a money line to feel a thrill to win something. I think I got an edge here. I'm going to bet this. And then you start getting frustrated because you were once arbing, you were once plus EV, you were once seeing this profit, and now you're losing because you're trying to chase a big win, which you're used to, but you cannot do it in the same way. You're not playing the same game anymore. And exchanges don't limit. And so that can be a potential to overbet there. So I think semi-pro bettors or once pro bettors, people who maybe get into this as a hobby and really have a knack for it and pick it up and start excelling and showing promise, and then they get limited. I think they are at some of the highest risk here to overbet because they're used to and they've conditioned themselves to do so. The other path, the third path, is acceptance. And this is the path that says, okay, we had a good run. We made money. We took what we could from the industry, and they got us. They got the last laugh. And so what this path does is it takes the knowledge gained into the next chapter. It learns about the value of price and value and making a good bet, making an informed bet. But it recognizes, in all caps, this is no longer a money-making endeavor. For 4 years, I was betting to make money. If I reach the acceptance phase, I have to understand that money is not the goal. We'll talk about that in a second. You're betting to be entertained with the possibility of making money. And so this is a very simple Punnett square that I've drawn for you, where professional bettors' intent, why they bet, is to make money, period. A possible side effect is a rush, is joy, is entertainment, is the thrill, whatever you want to call the emotional response to a bet either winning or losing. Now, some professional bettors don't care about that. They're robots. They bet based on a number. Win, lose, or draw, they are unmoved. It's maybe more rare than not, but it exists. I am of the other extreme. I could never be a plus EV full-on professional bettor because I feel feelings too big and losses hurt. A win does not feel good as a loss hurts. I've discussed that before. Now, most bettors, I believe, should accept that they are betting with the intent of the thrill, of the rush, to have fun, to be entertained, to make the game more interesting. I'm not arguing that that's a good thing. I'm arguing that that should be the intent, with the possible side effect of making money. We're here to have fun. We're here to be entertained. And some of you may be like, yeah, duh. Like what? Like you're uncovering this world that I'm not even familiar with. And then some of you over here may be like, wait, what? You're talking about something idiotic. And that's why I feel so bizarre in this industry. And my banner on Twitter says 2 EV for the degens, 2 degen for the plus EV guys, right? Like I am in the middle of this industry being tugged both ways because I think people on both sides have arguments that are legitimate about the goals of this industry. But I feel like I see both sides and I try to reason through both of them. So I want to show quickly this conversation I had recently, 7 days ago, on my channel. I posted this video, a long video similar to the length of this one, that says the future of my channel and why sports betting ideologies can change over time. And I talked about a lot of this stuff loosely in it. There may be some repeat, but this one I hope is a little bit more planned out and logical for some of you. And this fellow pork chop, who I have loosely known for the better part of 3 years in this industry, we used to go around and around on Dinger Tuesday because he would bet Dinger Tuesday strictly on plus EV. Look at FanDuel's numbers, look at the market, and whatever number was good on FanDuel, regardless of the game, regardless of the player, regardless of anything, he would bet them. And I chose to take it more from a bottom-up, handicapping, originating perspective and say, hey, I'm not going to take that guy because I don't like the game. It's in San Francisco and the wind's blowing in. You're not going to get home runs. I don't care if that player is plus EV. So we fundamentally do not agree on why people sports bet. And so his comment was, men will do anything to make money sports betting except follow basic plus EV principles. And I said, to be fair, that only gets you so far. After limits come, and they will, then you're left to scale, right? If we go back, once limits come, you're left to scale. Scaling is called getting accounts. Scaling is called, okay, I can't bet on my name. How can I bet? So what I'm saying is his comment is somewhat irrelevant to me because if I'm choosing not to scale because that's time, that's energy, and that's still going to be a dead end, what do? He said, you'd get a lot further than you think if you applied properly instead of handicapping or originating. If you are a winning sports bettor, the limits are inevitable. So he agrees with me. And so I said, I guess what I'm saying is, what good will plus EV betting do me now on limited accounts? Are you thinking I incorporate it into the content? Like, I'm trying to decide, is he trying to say that I should stop handicapping my home runs every day, just give out plus EV plays? I said, what I mean is I can personally no longer plus EV bet based on my accounts. He said, but you can instead bet negative EV plays on a Patreon or on YouTube. Either you can bet or you can't. If you can, why bet negative EV? And I simply said, for the rush, I guess, for the joy, for the entertainment. Some people don't understand that betting can be fun. Like, and I'm not going to argue that that's good. I'm not going to argue that that cannot be dangerous. I'm just saying that there is a world that exists where people sports bet as a form of entertainment, as a form of joy seeking. And a lot of plus EV or professional sports bettors do not understand that. So here is something that I would challenge everybody to ask themselves. It doesn't have to be black and white, or in this case, green and red, but understand that if you feel like you're strongly associated with one more than another, that can help you reach this point of acceptance. So how often do you win and regret not betting more versus how often do you lose and regret not betting less? Very few times when I win do I think, man, I should have bet more. You know why? Because I'm just happy to win. I am excited that I made the correct call. I am excited that I walked away with something. More often do I lose and think, man, I overbet. Man, I should not have spent so much money on that play. Man, that loss kind of hurts. Okay, and money is different for everybody, and I'm not talking about hundreds of dollars here, right? Even a $20 loss sometimes goes, okay, I probably shouldn't have bet 20 there. More than, man, only bet 20 there. I should have bet 30. So part of the acceptance path for me is saying, okay, where can I lose less in order to win more? So bankroll management and unit sizing moves from a math equation based on your edge to a simple number based on your emotional tolerance. And this is going to get me kicked in the face by sharp bettors. This is going to get me laughed out of the room. But understand, not everybody is a professional sports bettor. By and large, 90% of the betting population is not a professional sports bettor. Our world in this industry is going to eat up a subsect of our culture because they're expecting to return. They're hoping, they're chasing, they're desiring something that the odds say you're not going to win at long term. And so these professional sports bettors will say, well, you determine your bankroll and your units based on your edge, and then you bet accordingly, and that's how you make money long term. Yeah, that misses a lot of people in the industry. And I would argue that a better way to do it is to think, how am I going to handle this loss? Is betting this much going to hurt me mentally, emotionally? Yes, if it loses. Okay, then let me bet less. Let me find a number where I'm happy with a win and not upset with a loss. So I've added this down here. And again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Pro bettors want to masquerade as knowledge fountains and moral do-gooders, but neglect that if everyone did what they did or had the resources that they have, we wouldn't have the industry. I think one of my biggest frustrations in this is pro bettors plus EV bettors, people who post their pickets, people who make money, who sit on this mountain with their white beards and their robes, and they look down at everyone else and they say, oh, you could be like me if you just did what I do. What? Get my cousin's DraftKings account on a Mint Mobile iPhone 6? Because some people fundamentally do not have the ability to do that. But you're not telling them that's how you do it. Okay? Ideally, and again, this is my opinion. This is going to get me pushed not only off the mountain, but off the maybe out of the country of this proverbial mountain with the YZV better on top. I'm going to be banished. I'm going to be probably ostracized for treason. The purest form of sports betting, I would argue, is somewhat of a socialistic perspective, which the sports betting industry is by and large not of that mind in general. And I don't hate them for it. I'm not mad at them for it. I'm just saying, I'm warning you that that's kind of where I am viewing this from. And there could be some fundamental differences in that. 90% of bets placed are from people who are going to lose long-term. We need to view sports betting through a harm reduction lens, not a profit-driven one, which is so paradoxical, which goes against our minds, it's backwards. Some people do not have even the capacity to analyze this with the nuance that I'm trying to give you because they see it only from the perspective of making money or from the perspective of you're going to lose, so why do it? And I'm not arguing that's not a good lens to look from. I'm arguing that our culture doesn't view it like that. So let's talk about it. Right? This is the argument of abstinence only sex education. Well, the only way to have sex in the best way. This is an EV better talking. Okay, you either have sex under the confines of marriage, or you don't have sex at all. It's pretty simple. Well, people are gonna be fluffing around between the sheets or in the car or in the woods. I don't know where people do it when they're not married. I've never done it in the woods. All right. I waited till marriage. I'll tell you the truth. I waited till I had the ring on. I was a plus EV sex guy. Okay. But I don't think it's reasonable to expect the masses to wait till marriage. I don't think it's reasonable to expect the masses to view this as a money-making plus EV endeavor or to be done. People are going to bet because they love sex. People are going to bet because the orgasm feels great. The win? Oh, man. Let me nut all over this bet slip. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Are you following me on these very, very graphic terms? I'm trying to get you to understand that there are people out there who do not view from your perspective or my perspective, but they exist. And so my goal here as a GMG enterprise is to look in the face of all these sex fiends, all these teenagers running around porking and sporking without protection saying, hey, you're going to have sex. You're going to bet. Maybe you consider a condom. Maybe you consider being in a relationship and understanding what this could do to your emotions if you tango naked. Okay? What's that going to do to you as a person? How's it going to affect your relationship? Are there consequences? Perhaps the STD. Maybe even the teen pregnancy. Are you able to care for a kid, right? Like, let's not neglect the fact that people are sports betting here. Abstinence-only sports betting doesn't work. So in order to reach the purest form of sports bettor, each bettor must weigh their own emotions, motivations, and disposable incomes. I'm not going to tell you in a concrete term what the purest form of sports bettor is. You have to decide what your purest form of sports bettor is. And that may take some time. So let's just summarize it now that we're kind of talking the birds, the bees, and the STDs. Okay? Sportsbooks extract profit from the working class through hope and expectations of winning. And I think the people who are best at sports betting do a good job of also pushing this narrative, which is a paradoxical issue. We all aspire to be a professional bettor, a plus EV bettor, a winning bettor. And it's through their broadcasting of their winnings that further pushes the narrative that it is a realistic possibility, when I don't think fundamentally it is long-term. Okay, the biggest losers in this space are those who have the least to lose. And a lot of people who are professional sports bettor come in with some advantage. Okay, and they say anyone can beat the books with hard work, but they neglect the fact, and again, this is, I understand the maybe even the political ties. I get it, guys. But success at scale, long-term, requires capital. It requires money. It requires technology. It requires tools. It requires data. It requires networks. It requires time. It requires a certain insulation from risk. People who have a lot to lose are going to lose harder and faster. And so I listen to these podcasts, I listen to these spaces, and I hear people say, "Oh, well, if you want to get better at originating, you just need data. That's all you need." Well, data is expensive. Data costs. Getting data just use ChatGPT. You can get all your data. Well, then how do you know it's good? You find out through tracking. You find out through time. You find out through trial and error. All of these things are not as easy as, "Oh, look how much I made on Picket this month, $6,000. I'm having a lot of sex in my marriage." Right? Most bettors cannot sustainably reach profitable levels without the means to these things. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't have these things. I had these things for a short time. And once limits hit, I don't have networks, and nor do I have time. I do not have the energy. I have the capital, I have the tech, I have the tools, I have the data, I have insulation from risk. I don't have the networks, and I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the drive. So the last thing I'll say in this freaking long video, well, I believe we are screwed as a culture with nationwide legalized betting. Truly. No, I do believe that. I believe this is a net negative for the world, for specifically more often than not young men in the world. I think we can reduce harm by viewing it less as a money-making endeavor and more as a means to entertain. If you wouldn't pay $100 to go see a movie, would you pay $100 to watch a baseball game? And I can't answer that question. $100 is relative. The $100 doesn't matter in this hypothetical. What matters is what can you not just afford to lose, but what can you feel okay emotionally with losing? Those are just my opinions, and I might be an idiot.